שמע שיר חדש
Okay, I'd like to dedicate this year for Shlema for Hanashira Bas Gitol, who's having surgery this afternoon. It's my sister. Please daven for her. She has a broken leg. So among all Sharcholi Israel and the special protection for all the soldiers who have been sent back into Gaza on this latest operation, we need Mamish Shmira Shebeshmira. Hashem should guard their precious souls, their bodies. They should the etzem lo yishberu bo, not even a broken bone. Okay, so Baruch Hashem, this week Parshas Behar b'chukosai, and really I'm very excited that we had experienced as Klal Yisrael two major events, one in our personal calendar and one in the global process of Geula. What am I talking about? BaOmer, which went off over 250,000 approximately visitors without incident. This is kimat a miracle, and I will tell you, it is a miracle, and I will tell you why. And what its great significance is. If you noticed in the last 5 years, because of various events, including COVID, I think that handled 1 or 2 years, the terrible tragedy that happened in Meron, the multiple deaths. Let me ask my class, how many years ago was that? Anybody know? How many years ago was that incident? Was in
4 years.
It was so. In other words, 2020 Lag BaOmer was at the very big. It was smack in the middle of COVID, right? COVID had started Purim time, so by the time we got to Lag BaOmer, it was already in full force. There were complete restrictions in year 1 of COVID. In year 2, you mean the COVID restrictions were already lifted? Well, 4 years ago, it put us at 2021 or 2022? 2021?
21.
That was the year of the horrible accident in Meron, terrible tragedy in Meron?
Yeah.
And then I know for sure last year there was no prayers on Meron because of the war with Hezbollah, correct? And the 2 years before that, I think maybe there was extremely limited in the COVID year. Very few people allowed to go. And bottom line is that for the past 5 years, there really has been terrible controversy, tragedy, disease, incredible world events, including the war with 7 Arab countries, which is really the most dangerous war Israel has fought or experienced anyway since its creation. And and this year, Baruch Hashem, the roads were open again. The people who go into Meron were fine. And then there was another incident that happened a number of years ago. If you recall, help me out here, that there was terrible heat and dehydration. Do you remember that year? And people were, I think that was the year before even COVID. So the very fact that Hashem opened up the portals to two strategic places for davening that have been racked with war, that have been extremely limited in the last 5 years. One is Meron, a second is Ukraine and Eastern Europe. People are traveling regularly. This past Rosh Hashanah in Meron, in Uman, for example, was no incident. People were going to Mezhibush to visit the Baal Shem Tov. People are going to Berditchev to daven at the Kedushas Levi. The pathways have reopened. Now you'll ask me, why is that so significant? And I think what it represents is a unencumbering of our tfilos. In other words, we say by Eicha, Sasam Tfilosi. One of the simonim of tragedy or Hester Panim with the Jewish people is the concept of Hester Panim. Hashem turns his face kaviyachol away, or the reality is we turn our face away from Hashem. And that symbolizes the opposite of bracha, because everything about the bracha is Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom, Ya'er Hashem panav elecha, all sorts of bracha, which is embodied in one of the mitzvahs we read about in last week's parsha, the lechem hapanim, that I would like to talk about today also, which is the 12 showbreads that represented the 12 tribes of Israel for blessing. Hashem was actually asking the Kohanim to bring that bracha forth, kaviyachol, from Hashem, in the name of Hashem, but in the name of the Shechina, which rested on the Mishkan and Beis HaMikdash, to absorb and accompany us and connect with us, and not to be behester panim. So we can say that Hashem showed us a little bit of Ya'er Hashem panav elecha, Ya'er, literally, or light. Zohar, that's the light of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, as we mentioned last week. I think a very important shir last week. If you didn't listen to it, please listen to it, because it's programmatically very, very important. I'm going to pick up on that theme a little bit today, but also from the context of the Parsha, and a little bit about Rabbi Shimon's influence, which is still with us, just, having, it's Monday after Friday, like BaOmer, we're still in the afterglow of the bonfires, which Baruch Hashem went without incident. I hope it went without incident for you. I didn't hear anything about terrible tragedies, injuries, fires. There were fires before, but those were lit by our enemies. But when it came to the holy fire of Lag BaOmer and all the hadlakos, and through an entire nation, I think all the pyro maniacs in the world would be very jealous of what the spectacle of the bonfires in Israel on Lag BaOmer. And I don't know, very, very close to streets, bus stations, Eruvin, I don't know. It is, to my mind, and even on my block, they even lit on Wednesday night. It's unbelievable. They had a whole hadlaka for younger children on Wednesday night, and I was very, very close to the street. And I was like, "What? It's not even Lag BaOmer yet." There's such a dedication, but there is a root of holiness of that, of course, and that is the concept of or ability to see, and the or Hashem. So I want to really offer a birkas hodah to Abba Kadosh Baruch Hu, and we have to acknowledge Hashem. Thank you, Hashem, so much that 250,000 Jews were able to be represented there. And whether you made it or not, because it's not simple to get up to Meron these days, as my Rebbe, as one of my Rebbeim, Rabbi Koenig from Tzfat, said, you are in Meron with Rabbi Shimon, any place that you rejoice in his Torah. So you don't have to be in Meron to be lit by the Torah of Rabbi Shimon, but you do have to learn his Torahs, which contain his or. In fact, I heard from a shir just now from a very, very renowned teacher, Rabbi Tzvi Rosenfeld, who said that the biggest way to really celebrate Lag BaOmer and the great contribution of Shimon Bar Yochai, and of course his Rabbi Akiva, is by saying over the actual words of Shimon Bar Yochai, and therefore sharing his teachings. So I'd like to do a little bit of that. So let's start as follows. Last week's parsha, we had the mitzvah of the Shtei HaLechem. The Shtei HaLechem, as we just said, is representative of the Parnasa of Klal Yisrael. It's Keter Malchus, and a Melech has three kelim in the Mishkan Beis HaMikdash, which represent Ketzarim, Shalosh Kesarim, as it says in Pirkei Avos, Keser Torah, Keser Kuna, Keser Malchus, Keser Shem Tov Ole Al Gabeihem. Okay, so that particular verse, that particular Mishnah in Pirkei Avos actually speaks about three crowns and the crown of Shem Tov over it. So what are the three crowns? Ketzer Torah is represented by the rim, by the golden rim around the Aron Kodesh, which is inside the Kodesh Kodashim. The Lechem HaPanim, the Shulchan, and literally Shulchan means table. I mean, that's the table where you have your Parnasa. And it is the Zer Zahav. Notice the word Zer, very close to the word Zohar. Zer is a crown which shines. Usually crowns are made of a shiny substance, a precious metal, gold. Is Keser Malchus, because a melech is involved with two things, Milchama and Lechem, which is really the same. You have to provide security, which means secure your borders so that you can have peace and prosperity, right? Peace and prosperity. That's the job of the king. In addition to, that's his core job. And once he does that, then he can enforce the law of Hashem, the Torah itself, which he carries on his, literally as a amulet, a wristwatch, so to speak, lahavdil, a small Sefer Torah on his arm that guides him every step of the way. But the koach of a melech is in providing that bracha of Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha. In fact, you might argue that the three brachos correspond to the three shulchanos. Okay, let's go with that. Number one, Yali Hashem panecha. It says Yivarechecha v'yishmerecha. That would be representing the shulchan, because Hashem is giving you bracha, which is essentially parnasa, ushmira, which is security, and that's the job of melech, keser malchus, because that's a melech's job, to lech milchama and lechem. Yivarechecha Hashem, and the bracha is essentially life, food, which on which you make brachos. Yivarechecha Hashem, v'yishmerecha, and provide you material security, safety, and then Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yichuneka. That could be reference to the Sefer, to the Aron Kodesh. Okay, why? Because the third one is Ya'er. No, excuse me. Ya'er Hashem panav elecha v'yichuneka is talking about the crown of Kahuna, which is the Ketores, and whose the job is also the lighting of the menorah. Those two go together, and they represent Ketores, the ability to do tshuva, to align ourselves with Chachmas HaTorah. The two things are together. In fact, they're intertwined. The avoda of the Tamid and the Hadlakas Neros inside and Haktaras Ketores are all part and parcel of the ceremony. For example, on Yom Kippur, in which the Kohen is going back and forth inside and out. But that's the Kohen's job. The Kohen's job, is, unlike the Melech, is not to provide the platform on Parnasa and security, but to provide, just to protect the Jewish people from the sins that they have committed, not to create Hester Panim. Okay? That's why Ya'er Hashem panav elecha v'yichuneka. Ya'er, like the menorah. Again, Chen is Machaneh, which means like Machaneh Yisrael, everybody's together, everybody's getting along. Ben Adam L'Chavero, that was Aaron's job, make peace as a symbol of Shalom. And then working towards Shalom. But then finally, the Keser Torah is Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yasim lecha shalom v'hi bin so Aaron. Yisa is lashon of harama. That's the lifting up of the material reality of a person and filling them with Torah concepts, which is really machshavas Hashem and really a spirit of Hashem himself. Okay, so that's what we're after. But specifically, we want to know the idea of the 12 showbreads and the 12 tribes is a little troubling. So in last week's parsha, we had the menorah mentioned, and we had the shulchan mentioned, amidst all the karbanos of a yikra. Question Rashi Ramban debated was, why restate it in Parshas Emor? It's past week's parsha, the parsha that was the Shabbos after of connected to BaOmer. Why? Because we already had it in Shmos, and the answer the Rashi gave was, no, that was the preparation. This is the commandment to light. And Ramban says, no, the commandment was already, and this is a special commandment to Moshe Rabbeinu to light for 7 days to dedicate the Mishkan. But everybody would agree that the shulchan, which is the 12 showbreads, that belongs somehow in Parshas Emor, which is one of the major places we learn about the cycle of the Chagim, of the Shalosh Regalim of Klal Yisrael. So to understand that, first and foremost, is that we see that the concept of the Shvatim, who all have to come up for the Regalim, the Shalosh Regalim, right? These are the 12 Shvatim that must attend, as associated with the Shulchan, and therefore we cannot reference that without the unit of 12. So let's just ask ourselves a fundamental question. Everything, for example, in this week's Parshas Behar, revolves again which number? What's the primary number of Parshas Behar? Is 7. We speak about the Shemitah years. We speak about the Yovel, which is a compendium, 7 times 7. Also Sfiras HaOmer, which is also 7 times 7. 7 is Yemei Shabbata, Shiv Yemei Shabbasa. It describes the creation of the world. It describes the eschatology of how the world will last till the 7th millennium, at least the world as we know it. And that would seem to be the primary number. And yet, it's not the number that carries the most Kedusha. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, and actually it's a Gemara in Brachos at the very beginning, Daf Vav, speaks about different levels of the Shechina. It says once you hit 10, 10 is considered as if you've maxed out. Once you have 10 people, it says that Hashem is Nitzav Ba'adas Keel. Curiously enough, we speak about the spies, the Shvatim, the Meraglim, who represented theoretically all of the Shvatim. Okay, although there were only 10 of them, there were 10. And Ada, Ad Matai le'Eda Rozos, Ada is a description of 10. And 10 represents a minion. And 10 represents the ability to say Dvar Shebekadusha, Kriyas HaTorah, saying Kaddish Kedusha, and so on, Tefillah B'tzibur. So that number seems to be a more critical number, the number 10. And yet, all of our frame of references are seemingly around the number 7. Okay? So what's the connection between 7 and 10? So that is easily understood. And say, the Shechina requires 10 because ultimately there are not just 7 spheros in which the world was created. That's the lower aspects. That's the more human experience. The Sheva Yemei Shabbos, Shabbos was given to Bnei Israel, right? Hashem gave it to us as a matana. It's part of our world. Our world is the world of 7. But Hashem's world is above that. It has an additional 3 spheros called Chachma Bina Das. So when it comes to, how shall I say, exceeding this world and going to a connection with Hashem, really, you need those extra 3 connectors. Now, interestingly enough, according to the Zohar Kadosh, as taught by Shem Bar Yochai himself, there are 3 Mashiachs whose job is to maintain the connection between Hashem and the Jewish people, that they not be lost forever. It's interesting that we speak about the 10 tribes that are lost, correct? Well, who's going to bring them back? There's going to be 2 Mashiachs. There's going to be Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben Yosef, but above them, according to the Zohar, Moshe Mashiach. In other words, Moshe as Eved Hashem. Moshe being really an extension of, he was just Eved Hashem, completely batal. The words of Hashem rolled through his voice. So he's not even so much part of the human experience. Rambam says that he actually crossed over the line from man to Malach. That's a Rambam, super rationalist thinker and philosopher, agrees that Moshe Rabbeinu was no longer a worldly man. And that happened, by the way, on Yom Kippur when he got the Torah for the second time. Receiving the Torah for the second time is considered, according to the Zohar Kadosh, the Madrega that Shimon Bar Yochai reached. He is Moshe. He is an extension of Moshe, but he only reached the level of Moshe by the second Dibros, not the level that Moshe reached, which is the first Dibros, is what separated him from all the other Nevi'im. Okay. But, okay, it seems like everything works very logically. You have 10 Spheros. Basar Mamarim Niver Olam, the world was actually created with 10 Mamaros. So, and yet, 7 is the reflection of the human experience. This is confirmed by a Mishnah in Yuma. In Yuma, it speaks about the Sela Zazel. That, and we've been learning about it in Daf Yomi, the animal which carries all the sins of Bnei Israel, with the exception of Tumas Migdash v'Kadasha, meaning if you make the Mikdash Tameh, then you have to receive compensation from the Seir Hanasa Bifnim. But all the other Averos are Seir Hanasa B'chutz. Okay? So the concept is that there are 10 stations that the Mishnah and Yuma outlines where the Seir HaMishtaleach goes on his journey. 10 stations. At each station, we tell the person who's carrying him to throw him off the cliff is, say, we have 10 sukkos and saying, hey, Mazon, hey, here's Mayim, here's Mazon. Not that we expect him to eat, but that he shouldn't be weak. He should feel like he can always eat if he needs to, because he has to fulfill his job to get us out there. 10 stations represents actually Shivim Shana. The 7, the full lifetime of a human being is also in the realm of 7. But really, in Pirkei Avos, we speak about people who can reach the age of 100. Okay, so we say ben shivim, ben shishim lezikna, ben shivim leseva, which is the fully mature, fully ripened. Od yinuvun b'seva is the idea of a complete individual. He's lived a rich and rewarding life, but that's not where it ends. We say b'shmonim legvura, and that's a reference to a special kochos hanefesh to renew. The Rabbi said that a person at 20 years old really begins their major part of their journey in life, and when they reach really, past 20 till 21, that's the third rotation of 7 in their lives, and will go till the 10th. So that is the 70 years. But he says that's 50-year period from 20 to 50 is the first Yovel of your life. But the reality is that if you understanding, I heard Labash Rebbe say this live on a tape when I went to visit the Oyhel one time. He said, yeah, but the second 50 is stronger than the first 50. He spoke about the 50th anniversary of his father becoming Rebbe. He says, it was the 50th anniversary. It must have been 1991. And because his father-in-law became Rebbe, I think became in 1920. So this was all the way back to 1970. So then he said, but the second 50 would be even stronger. Oh, maybe he meant in New York, which was only at age 41. Okay, that makes more sense. But the second 50 is stronger than the first 70. And that leads us to, I will add, 120 years. That's the mystery of the number 12. So why is it that there are 12 Shvatim, 12 Chadashim, 12 months, right? 12 Mazolos, which with Hashem created the stars that rule the night, yet we speak about 7 when we speak about our world, our Shabbos, our week, 7 days of Shabbos, 7 millenniums. So here's what I'd like to suggest. The Mazalos are 12. The Shvatim are 12. Why? Well, we say, first and foremost, Ein Mazal Yisrael. We overcome all the constellations and their influence on the world, as it outlined in Ramchal, that these are the messengers of sending Hashem's direction and hashkacha towards us. Without going to more, even Rambam agrees with that. You don't have to believe in astrology, but we do believe that the stars convey Hashem's will somehow from the distant Shemayim here to our earth. And that's why we wish somebody a mazel tov and all of that. But that represents more of Hashem's experience. Hashem's experience of us is the 12 mazolos, and that's a distant, very distant, the stars, not even the planets, although the planets are more associated with the 7 days of the week. In fact, we follow, according to our Kabbalistic sources, that each one of the quote-unquote 7 planets, there were 7 visible planets to the naked eye. Those are the planets that rise daily as part of their rotations, and that is part of our Shiva Yamei Shabbasa. But the constellations in the 12, which represents the Shvatim, is something higher than that. It's something more distant than that. It's Merames to the Yad Hashem on the world. So if Sheva represents the world, and 10 represents the, how shall I say, the chibur of this world to Hashem, 12 represents the influence of Hashem onto our lives. Influence of Hashem. And that's why the Jewish tribes had to be 12. Because we are the hope of mankind, that Hashem's bracha and blessing should flow, nozel, mazal, to this world. In fact, Klal Yisrael was given that job. And that's why there are in particular 12 Shvatim. Because Hashem is very interested in his world of 7 and 10. But his realm, I guess it's 12, close to the Yud Gimel Midos HaRachamim, and really there are really 13 tribes because we take out either Aaron, we add 2, 5 Menashe, so it's kind of a 13 representing the Yud Gimel Midos HaRachamim. That's our job. Our job is represented by the 12/13 model, which is Hashem's Midas HaRachamim for Kiyum HaOlam. And that can only be if we play our role, Amcha Kulam Tzadikim, right? La'olam Yirshu Eretz, they will inherit the land. So, in summary, I asked you, what's the significance of the number 12 of the Shulchan, and why it took a place in Parshas Emor of last week? So I can add to that the following: the entire Jewish people have to come on Shalosh Regalim, right? And the story of that is in Parshas Emor, as is the story of the Parnasa and Bracha of the 12 Shvatim, because the 12 Shvatim and 12/13 Shvatim represent the ability to bring Hashem's Rachamim and overcome the din of the world. This is really the job of the Jewish people. We are the ones who can overcome the Midas Hadin. That's why we say Ein Mazal Yisrael, because we can overcome the Midas Hadin. How can we do that? We do that through the vehicle, certainly by fulfilling the Torah mitzvos, but more importantly, even direct intervention and supplication and prayer, which is why the Gemara tells us when a person is in trouble, the Midas Hadin starts to affect one of its major areas, Bani, Chayim, Zoni, or sometimes all three. Problems with children. And how many problems are there with children? Problems with them continuing in the way of Torah, of Shmiras HaMitzvos, problems with Shidduchim, problems with fertility, problems with divorce, problems with raising them in such a way that they'll be Bal Midos and Bali Rachamim, despite all the pressures of our world to be more self-absorbed, self-interested. How can somebody be married if they have only self-interest? This is the real core problem that we're having today in marriages, because we have been influenced by the world to be focused on our own phone, on my Facebook, my face. You know, Hashem, Mishnah in Sanhedrin says that no two faces of Hashem created are ever the same. says a human being will mint a coin of George Washington dollar bill, or hopefully Benjamin Franklin, and then they'll be all the same. Ma'ashen Kadosh Baruch Hu, who stamps each human soul and body with the stamp of Adam Harishon, same limbs, the same 10 fingers, and so on and so forth, hopefully. 10 toes, which obviously confirms that the number 10 is critical. And that's the spheros, of course, the 7 lower accessible ones or emotional ones, and the 3 intellectual ones, which are our bridge to Hashem, which are basically contained in the neck above. But where's the 12? So the 12 that comes in is about reaching out, 12/13, to the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim, that will keep Hashem from judging his 7-10 creation. You have to understand the profundity of this. Yimei Adam Shivim Shana. Okay? So, and the Mishnah Pirkei Avos divides a person's life into decades. A little more, because there are other stops along the way, Chamish Lamikra, but we basically say Ben Eser Mishnah. Okay, you got to stop there for Chuppah and Kedushin by 18, but really, it's essentially the 10, the 20, the 30. 20 is Lirdof, is to go out there in the world and establish yourself and your family. Ben Shloshim Makoach, you reach your full strength to sustain family and sustain community. Those are the guys that build up shuls and communities, are the guys in their 30s. And then they're sustained by the 40s, Ben Abraham Lubina, who give wise counsel, in the 50s, who are people who give Eitzah. So you see, that's the group. That's the group that mostly carries the labor, 30 to 50. As the Baal Shabi said, starting after 20. But you have 20 to 50, those are the main years of labor, of tzava, of milchama, of halavim. But then your life moves into a different phase, which is the shishim lezikna. But zikna doesn't mean infirmity. It means zeh shekana chachma. At this point, a person is considered an expert, having lived through all sorts of vicissitudes of bani chayim mizoni, problems with children, problems with parnasa, problems with health. And a person usually, when they'll reach the age of 60, have seen a variety of these challenges, if not for themselves, for their immediate family, for their parents. Maybe they experienced losses already in life, hopefully not. And then we get to Shmonim, Shishim L'Zikna, right? Ben Shivim L'Seva, which is the ripening. That's your life. Those 70 years, but then there's this extra. Ben Shmonim L'Gvura, Ben Tishim La Shuach, where you're reaching your highest spiritual levels. Sicha is prayer, it's Hisbodedus, and then fine. Ben Mea is already making the transition to the next world. Okay, of course that's going to be extended to 120. Notice 120. 120 represents the full expansion, because if you're going to get to that 120, it means you had a second 50. You had your first Yovel, 20 to 70, like Baal Shabi said, and then you have your second Yovel from 70 to 120, and that's what Moshe Rabbeinu experienced. That is life in its fullest sense, where you transcend the restrictions of this world of 7 and 10. We can't go into all the details, but that's why there's 10 Makos, there's 10 Sfiros. Oh my God, the Mishnah, we will have to learn Perek Hey, hopefully. I think it is this week. This week, very appropriate, because it's Perek Hey of Pirkei Avos, and that's why I was inspired a little bit to talk about the numerology. This is the week of numerology, which goes 10, 7, 3. If you follow the Mishnayos in the 5th Perek, you'll see Asar Mamoros, Eser Makos, Asara Doros, the generations between Adam and Noah. These are all the key critical instances of human experience in this world and its salvation. But it's not the end. It goes further than that. So the reach of the beyond is what those tzaddikim represent. Notice it doesn't say in Pirkei Avos ben something l'tzadik, because anybody can be a tzaddik according to the Rambam, and anybody can be a rasha. You have bechira. There's no guarantee that you'll be a tzaddik. But the tzaddikim have a koach because of their learning, because they conquered their Yetzer Hara, essentially. Because of that, they reach some sort of ability of koach to be sholet on life. Now, so Rabbi Rosenfeld explained that this in the context of Shimon Bar Yochai. Shimon Bar Yochai promised his colleagues, all right? Let's read what it says. Shimon Bar Yochai hivtiach shelo tishtakech Torah miYisrael. This is from the introduction of the Sefer Likutei Maharan, in honor of Shimon Bar Yochai. Why did Rabbi Nachman associate him with himself with Shimon Bar Yochai by putting a teaching about Shimon Bar Yochai as the prelude? And he says, "Lechu chazu beru mifalos Hashem." Look how great this Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is, and it's because, as we'll see, he associates himself with the same mission that Shimon Bar Yochai had, which was Kilo Tishachach Mipi Zaro. Okay, so this is Gemara in Shabbos Kuf Lamed Ches. Shenichnusu Rabbeinu lekeren b'Yavneh. After the Churban, the Roman destruction, Amru Atida Torah Shtachach Yisrael. There's no way we can prevent the forgetting. And he says, fascinatingly enough, Rabbi Rosenfeld said that forgetting there's a gematria that associates it with mavet, death. Funny that Alzheimer's and forgetfulness is a sign of decay of the mental capacity, which is life. And that is life. So forgetfulness. Maybe that's why we say Zachor es asher asa Amalek. We need zikaron. We need sharp memories going into our every day of our lives forever. There's a mitzvah, Zeicher L'tzias Mitzrayim. Zikaron is life. If you don't remember, you're not in life. And I don't have to go into details about that because we're also familiar with the problems of Shikha today. And he says that it's going to be a Shikha HaTorah. He says, I will personally guarantee that the Jewish people in the Torah will never forget completely about the Torah. Okay, that is quoted in the Zohar. That's the words of Shimon Bar Yochai, Parshas Naso, Daf Kuf Chaf Daled. And he says, how? B'hai Chibura, because the book that I'm authoring here, that he gave over in verbal form to Rabbi Abba to write down, the Zohar, which was concealed, as we said, for 1,000 years until it was printed. Yifkun be min galusa, yetzu min hagalos. Right? So he says, why was Rav Shimon Bar Yochai the one to promise this? Okay? So here, the Binachman explains as follows. Because Ribui Tzoros Viskabros Koach Hatuma Ba'olam Bifrat Bedor Achron Shalom. He was talking in the 1800s. Can you imagine what he'd say today? There's so many problems that separate, that evolve the Jewish people. Even think just about the problem of anti-Semitism that has enveloped us in the last several years and the magnitude which has reached, so that people openly curse, spit, defame the name, accuse us of the things that they wish to do to us. Jews are accused of genocide. Well, there was only one nation that has been targeted, that every blood-carrying member of the Jewish people should be exterminated. Only us. And there would be problems, because the goal is to separate the zikaron of Hashem from us. And it's logical that Shalom Torah b'koach. But since Shimon Bar Yochai learned Torah with such power in the Mara for 13 Shana, mitoch tsar v'dochak, in some such circumstances of pain, not unlike the captives in the tunnels, ad ein kates, when we talk Yisurim bli shur, without any limit to their suffering, and he was able through that, the koach zeh zachal l'shabir lahafchis is koach hatuma. Koach hatuma is death. As we mentioned last time, the ability to subjugate death, to overcome death, to reach life, and not succumb to mortality. He is therefore the one that says Klal Yisrael will remain alive, koach hazikaron, and not shikha, which represents diminution, degradation, and death. Ki al yedei limud Torah b'koach zochim lahashivas achein v'chashivas l'am Yisrael. This is the subject of Rabbi Nachman's first Torah also, as we see learning Torah hard. Learning Torah by using your entire memory, your entire brain. And he said, V'zeh kavanas Rabbi Yosef Chaim Baal HaBen Ish Chai. He quotes the piyut. He says, Taraso Magen Lanu, He Mi'iras Einenu. Of course, if you can't see, Choshech is Mavis. Perish Aradei Taraso Shalom Mitoch Tsar. The Torah that's learned in pain and suffering, that's our protection. V'hi Mi'iras Einenu. And I actually was part of I wouldn't call it a dialogue. I would call it a sharing of messages, where there were a number of rabbis who I love, respect, and admire, who were hypercritical about, quote unquote, Haredim not going to the army, yes, going to the army. I wrote to them and I said, listen, there are many things I could say about it, but it sends to me like a tone of sinas chinam. Now, I do understand that the people who believe that their God-given mission and their understanding of halacha is that you must send your children to the army. And I pity all those young men who are being sent into Gaza. For I hope Hashem will protect them, and they shouldn't just be lives that are lost with no accomplishment whatsoever. But there should be some sort of miracle, Kiddush Hashem, release of hostages, end of hostilities, something. Defeat should be something. So, granted, they have this incredible mission and goal, and could understand by putting their life on the line how much they could resent others that don't. But at the same time, Torah is the Magen. Torah so Magen Aleinu. If you're going to take away those Yoshvei Torah, Yoshvei BaOmer Torah, and learning B'dochek of Mesiras Nefesh, since when is that a good strategy for defense? Remember Chizkiyahu HaMelech defeated, so to speak. He didn't do anything to defeat. Hashem's Malach defeated him. Malachim defeated the massive armies of Sancherev, right? By what? Gemara tells us he locked everybody in the base medrash and said, learn. What was he doing? He should have gone out to war. Because there's war and there's war. And as Yaakov Avinu said, he defeated Shechem. Now, there were soldiers there. There was Shimon and Levi, and who knows, the other Shvatim as well, attacking Shechem and saving the captive daughter Dinah, very analogous to today. But at the same time, Yaakov took full credit. He says, Asher lakachti, I'm going to give Shechem to Yosef, achar alachechem, because I took it, b'charbi b'kashti, with my weapons of war. What kind of weapons of war? Since when did Yaakov? So there may be some midrash that suggests Yaakov actually did join the battle. But even if he didn't, Pashup Shot is, he davened. So this combination of Torah b'Mesiras Nefesh and literally beseeching Hashem for Yud Gimel Midos Harachamim, that's a winning formula. Ba'al yodo lo tishtakach Torah Misrael. Then he says his big chiddush here. Ki sofei tevos shel zeh pasuk ki lo tishtakach mipi zaro hem osios yochai. Ki, the last letter is Yud. Lamed Aleph lo tishakach chet mipi Yud zaro vav spelled yochai. And the remez here is that Bar Yochai, as he came to be known, was the one who would cause that there would not be forgetting of Torah because of his ability to learn b'Mesiras Nefesh on behalf of all of us and literally save us. Okay, and then Reb Nachman concludes his introduction to his Sefer. He says, Ad Shabar Rabbi Shimon v'gila Sefer HaZohar Shebo ve'al yodo noson gam ledor shafel kamonu eitzos nechonos lavodas Hashem b'kedusha v'tara. The purpose of the Zohar is to teach us how to serve Hashem in holiness and purity. U'memela gam taraso tiyeh malea b'chein de kedusha. Our regular Torah learning needs a lot of life. It needs a big boost in our generations of suffering because it's just not enough. We have to have the Kedusha and Tahara which really only can come with davening for it. Yizchul Yisrael Atzeis Ma'agalus. This is the plan. The plan is to adhere the Jewish people with Kedusha and Tahara. Now, what do we want to say? Amachane Yisrael, that's for Milchama, according to the Torah, should be Kedusha and Tahara. So, if you can provide an atmosphere or create an atmosphere of Kedusha and Tahara for Machane Yisrael, then I could understand that that's the sort of war that is in a context of true success. But in the meantime, we have to create Kedusha and Tahara in the world, and that's the sod of Rabbi Shimon, as it says, Kida ki atana kadosh Shimon hu bechinas Daniel. Daniel invented tefillah. He didn't invent it. Many of the halachos of how to daven come from Daniel. Ir v'kadish min Shemaya Naches spells Roshei Tevas Shimon, and there's a reference to Daniel as an Ir v'kadosh min Shemaya Nachas. This great presence that came down to this world was Daniel, but it's Roshei Tevas Shimon. What is Rabbi Nachman saying? He's saying that if you don't liberate the Koach HaTefillah, even under the worst circumstances, Daniel was thrown into a lion's den. Daniel was held captive. Daniel had to stand a whole day without going to the bathroom in front of Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar worshipped him like a god because he didn't understand how he survived the lions and everything else. He gave Nevuos, he gave Hadracha, he gave everything. He was a representative to the non-Jewish world. He was Mishtadel for the Jewish people. He was the one that supported Mordechai and Esther to survive the horrors of Haman, and Haman actually killed Daniel, because Amalek would target that. That's what Amalek's targeting. He's targeting the ones that stand in the times of hard difficulty, and create Kedusha V'Tara through the learning and davening in combination. Now you understand what Rabbi Nachman thought his job was. He said, Gor mein Zach is tefillah. He said, my purpose is to remind you how to pray. He's the one that advocated for something that seems illogical, unheard of. He says, don't just daven from your siddur. As great as Tefillah B'Tzibur is, which is 10, there's something beyond that. There's the Yud Gimel Midos HaRachamim. There's the 12/13 tribes. We got to get beyond the simple minyan to Yud Gimel Midos HaRachamim, which is something that we as a minyan, we as a group, only do Elul and Aseret Yemei Tshuva. When the peak, when everything counts, when life and death is on the line, that's when we pull out again and again and again, like the end of Yom Kippur, time after time after time, Slichos, which is the Yud Gimel. It's essentially a repetition, time and time again, of Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim. Okay, so the fact that we made it this year as a nation to Meron and to other Makomos HaKadoshim outside in Chutz La'aretz is a great, great, great siman and a great, great boon to us. Now, on the other side of the equation, in looking at the Olam Haba, Olam Hazeh issues of right now, many people are very concerned about Trump's trip to the Middle East, his partnering with Qatar, of course, who funds all the hatred and the anti-Semitism on the Israeli campuses, taking presents for them of a bribe from them, and I don't know if he's considered the greatest Pikeach, but he took a shochad, serious shochad, of a plane worth who knows how much money, and then making ties with Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Qatar, who represent the Arabs against Iran. So this is just a fulfillment, ladies and gentlemen, of the Medrash that says that in the end of days, here we are, the king of Persia will want to destroy the world, will want to conquer the world, and threaten the king of Arab, which is Saudi Arabia, and Arab, which is they're really all in one. Qatar, Emirates, and Saudi Arabia is really all one. It represents Arabia. They are the Arabs. And of course, Egypt too, and part of Syria, etc. And they're reaching out to Melech Edom to save them from Melech Paras. And then the stage is set for the greatest and last of wars, which will be between Edom in combination with Arav against Paras and its partners, which we know today to be China, to a certain extent Russia, and Korea, and other forces of people who don't even know about serving a monotheistic God. And of course, Paras was a big place of Avodah Zarah. The symbol of Haman was himself an Avodah Zarah. So, Edom and Arav were not necessarily of the Avodah Zarah. Christianity is a machlokes rishonim, and Islam is certainly not a big machlokes rishonim that it's not considered Avodah Zarah, except we call it Avodah Zarah because they don't accept the honesty of Torah, so they're off, but they're not without reference. But the Persians who are commandeered by Islam right now and represent a portion of Islam. Let me explain. They represent Shiite Islam. Shiite Islam is battling Sunni Islam. Sunni Islam is much more monotheistic, a much purer sort of belief, whereas the Shiites believe in shrines and prophets and all kinds of stuff that's much, much closer to a Catholic version of Islam. That's what's going on over here. It's the pagan Islam, for lack of a better word, against the ultra radical monotheistic Sunni Islam combined with America. And where does that leave us? Watching. Out. So do you feel bad that Israel was not part of that whole deal? I don't, because we're not supposed to be part of the big fight. We are supposed to be safely covered by Hashem and his Yud Gimel Midos Harachamim while all this plays out, and only for our benefit. So don't be disappointed that Trump didn't come here, that he's saying how he wants to take all this money, because this is the will of Hashem, that the sides take shape. I heard even a deeper analysis, which kind of shocked me, but I'm not surprised at all. How much time do I have? How much time is left? 2 minutes? Great. That the real thing that's going on over here is the war between America and China over the new technology, AI, which requires what's known as rare earth minerals. It's a funny thing, but after all said and done, there's a new dimension of wealth. We always thought it was oil and gold and silver and buildings and steel. Nope, it's not that anymore. It's called rare earth minerals that are needed for these highly sophisticated nanotechnologies. We're in a whole new world right now. We're in a whole new era. And that's like the gold rush of in America. What was it, 1849? Yeah, 18, not 17, 1849. There's a gold rush right now. If you could collect an asteroid from outer space that landed on the Earth, you are a multi-trillionaire. Why? It's just a piece of rock. No, it's rare earth minerals. There's a real war going on here. We're entering an era that it's uncharted waters. Uncharted waters. Kimola is Dea. What we're witnessing now is happening in such speed that we just have to hold on, buckle your seatbelts. There's so much going on, and it's going to be for the Tova. We have to hang on to what Rabbi Nachman's message was. He says, you hang on to the tzaddikim like Shem Bar Yochai, the Zohar, the ones who live B'tar Kedusha and Torah B'Mesiras Nefesh for the love of the Jewish people. And they're not shirking their responsibilities necessarily. They are providing protection in their way, and perhaps in a most effective way that can even offer blessing and protection for all the soldiers of Hashem in whatever form. So I don't like any criticism going from Haredi camp to non-Haredi camp. There's beauty and Kedusha in every Jew and their approaches, and we shouldn't try to coerce every single Jew, in my opinion, to be like us. That's certainly what our enemies try to do, and it's not our way. We believe, find the Nekudot Tovot, like Rabbi Nachman says, and let that person shine. B'ezras Hashem, we're going to see rapid, as we already have. I'll end on this positive note. One of the results of this trip was that Israel was allowed, given permission, given information to destroy the brother of Sinwar, who I can tell you, based on my knowledge and understanding, was far worse than Sinwar, than his brother Yichye, Yimach Shemo, V'zichro L'olam, because he actually engineered and built every single tunnel and managed the entire plan of October 7th himself, and he died with 10 of his colleagues. Aseres B'nai Haman fell this week, the same time as Trump's trip. So don't look at it in a negative light. Look at it as that the B'nai Haman, which represent Persia, right? If you want to think about it, supported by Iran, took a blow. This is where things are going. And Be'ez Hashem, we should see the Amaleks of the world eradicated, and that Klal Yisrael should just sit by in peace with the triple bracha of Hashem Mishmerecha shining on us. The Zohar shines on our souls, keeps us holy, keeps us pure, keeps us happy, keeps us well, saves us from Bani Chaim Bizoni, saves us from all the problems of the world, keeps us in peace and security and prosperity. This is what I think a great BaOmer meant to us, and as Hashem, we should see it continue. Have a great, great Shabbos.
YIBONEH